And when you're talking production at a higher level, what do you mean by that?
Meaning the techs and the service advisors were capable of producing more work, taking on more work, and getting it through the shop and back to the customers.
And that work would be something that would be outlined in a report that you would review?
Yes, yeah. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Tony sends out a service tracking sheet for every department at that time. We still do it. Someone else does it in his absence, obviously. And it goes out to all the service advisors, service managers, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it has the, current performance as well as the performance for the end of the month extrapolated out.
All right. So 3 times a week, a service tracking sheet is circulated?
Yes.
And that circulation would include providing it to Mr. Valuch?
Yes.
And you were included in that circulation?
Yes, I'm on it.
And so as a result of what that tracking sheet indicates, you would follow up in areas that need addressing?
Yes.
And so when you're talking about general discussions with Mr. Valuch, is it direct response to this tracking sheet?
That and the conversations, that Tony and I had about performance and what the shop was capable of.
And you weren't present for the testimony that Mr. Valuch had earlier today, correct?
No, correct.
The testimony component from Mr. Valuch indicated that Dan only talked to Mr. Valuch when there was a customer complaint. How do you...
Objection, I believe that that mischaracterizes the testimony.
And I always have a trouble with the characterization of past testimony. He is testifying. I encourage the parties to just go with testify, as to what they claim is the facts. And if it doesn't match with somebody else's, then, we can argue about credibility and other things like that. But characterization of other people's testimony is problematic because neither party will agree on what exactly was said. I'll go ahead to the next question.
All right. Did you talk to Mr. Valuch as it relates to customer complaints?
Yes.
And how frequently would that line of questioning be?
Whenever there was a customer issue and I needed to respond to it, I would always go to the manager of the department that was involved and, get an understanding of it so that I could respond.
Okay. And did you speak to Mr. Valuch about things other than customer complaints?
Yes.
And would you indicate that you spoke to him more about customer complaints or more about other things?
I wouldn't say anyone. It depends on what the performance was poor. So we talked about that with frequency. I don't recall that period of time on what the frequency of customer complaints or concerns were.
Okay. And in this component of testimony, and again, I don't want to misstate earlier testimony, but there was 2 situations that were testified where it indicated that, you know what, I'll go about a different direction. Please strike that. In any of your conversations that you've had with Mr. Valuch, have you ever indicated to him that he's getting too old for anything?
No.
Would there be any context where you would indicate that Mr. Valuch's getting too old for anything?
No.
Were you aware that Mr. Valuch played hockey?
Yes.
Would you have ever made a statement that indicates that he was getting too old to play hockey?
No.
Were there any situations where his hockey playing impacted his job performance?
I don't think so. I mean, Dennis was, banged up a little bit, I think, from time to time playing hockey, but that was a walking issue mostly, I think. It wasn't I don't think it's really related to his performance in the job.
And then, are you aware of that Mr. Valuch has any disability?
No,
Do you have any perception of a disability that Mr. Valuch had while he was employed from January of 2017 to June of 2018?
no,
Did Mr. Valuch ever tell you personally that he had a disability?
no,
Was any accommodation made to you by anyone as it relates to a disability for Mr. Valuch?
no,
And then was the decision to transfer Mr. Valuch from service manager to workshop dispatch motivated by any perceived disability?
no,
And did Mr. Valuch's age have any factor in the decision to move him to workshop dispatch?
no,
And are you aware of Mr. Valuch's age today?
no,
And then it's going to be the same or similar questions as it relates to um, uh, elimination of the workshop dispatch. Did age play a factor in the elimination of workshop dispatch position?
no,
And did any disability play a factor in the elimination of the workshop dispatch position?
no.
Is there, how would you classify the decision to eliminate the workshop dispatch position? Was it a positive one financially?
Yes,
So as a result of eliminating that position, profits were increased?
yes,
And you indicated that there was a problem or an issue with gross profits with Mr. Valuch when he was working as a service manager. Is that correct?
yes, correct.
And so what was the problem with the gross profits?
They were not what they should have been, and they were not increasing as they should have been.
So is there a rate of growth that you're looking for the gross profits?
We are, and we can gauge them from our other brands and our other stores, as well as our other Mercedes-Benz store.
So you compare the profits of the West Allis Mercedes-Benz store with the other regional stores?
Regional stores, our stores, or Mercedes-Benz stores?
Either, I guess.
We would not have access to other stores profit-wise. We would have other metrics that would clearly point to performance and performance differences as it relates to service metrics, but gross wouldn't be one that we would be privy to from the manufacturer. We would compare it to our own brands at this location, and then we would also compare it to the growth at our other Mercedes-Benz store in Waukesha.
And what were the growth expectations at the store, West Allis International Autos?
I don't recall the exact ones. Generally projections are in the 10 to 15% year over year range.
And did the performance of the store meet or exceed those expectations when Mr. Valuch was the service manager?
No,
And who replaced Mr. Valuch as a service manager?
if I recall correctly, Megan Fitzgerald came aboard for that position.
Okay. And you worked with Megan Fitzgerald?
Yes,
And then, in fact, Mr. Valuch would have worked with Miss Fitzgerald for approximately that 1 month interim as well. Is that correct?
yes,
And Did Miss Fitzgerald's age play any role in her hiring?
No.
And then regarding Mr. Valuch's attendance, was there any issue with his attendance for his position?
I don't recall his attendance. We could provide those documents. I'm not sure exactly what his attendance was at the time.
And so we have three positions that we need to go through when it comes to salary analysis. The first position is service manager. The second position is workshop dispatch. And then the third position would be service advisor. There was testimony earlier that it would be a demotion to go from service manager to workshop dispatch. Do you agree with that testimony?
As it relates to compensation?
Yes.
Yes.
And the same was related as to compensation from workshop dispatch to service advisor. Would that be a decrease?
No, not necessarily. No.
And then the position that was offered to Mr. Valuch in the end of June was as a service advisor. Do you recall what that position would entail?
Yeah, service advisor. He would welcome the customers, review their complaints, document the car, the mileage, and write up repair orders, and then have interaction with the technicians and the customer to see it through to get the car back to the customer.
And was the position offered to Mr. Valuch created for Mr. Valuch?
The service advisor position?
Right.
No, we had that position.
Do you know who was in that position before it was offered to Mr. Valuch?
I don't recall it. No.
Does International Autos have a policy as it relates to clocking in and out for each shift?
Yes.
And is that policy required for hourly employees?
Yes.
And is that policy required for salaried employees?
Yes.
What's the reason that time clock policy is in place for salaried employees?
Well, I think there's two reasons. I still believe it to be a requirement, as far as I know, with the state. And it also, since everybody does it digitally on their desktop, you can see who's in and who's not in that day. It's a cheat sheet for everybody in the dealership to know who's there along with their extension. The receptionists use it to know who's there and who's not, for example.
Was there any issues with Mr. Valuch failing to clock in?
I don't recall any of those issues.
And would there be any liability if an employee doesn't clock in and an accident were to occur?
Yes.
And are you aware of any workplace accidents that involve Mr. Valuch?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. He said that he doesn't recall any issue with respect to Mr. Valuch and punching in. So I'm not sure why this is relevant.
The question was, are you aware of any workplace accidents that Mr. Valuch had? I don't know what your objection has to do with the question.
Well, there was the one previous, and I just would ask, the thing is, did attendance, clocking in and out, have any basis for your role in his, in either decision regarding his job?
One more time, please.
Did his attendance or failing to clock out, in and out sometimes, play any role in your part of the decisions to remove him from the two positions?
I don't recall that.
So it may have been and you're not sure, or what does that mean?
Yeah, there may have been some attendance issues. You know, I don't know what's been provided. I haven't refreshed myself on any of this, but you know,
That's,
is it
that's not what
possible
I
that?
asked. That's
Okay,
not my question.
okay.
My question is relating to you played, well, what role did you play in the decisions, in those two decisions to remove him from those two positions?
I was made aware of them. It's not
Okay,
my,
so
I
you,
mean, it's not my decision. It was relayed to me that a change was gonna be made, and this was our plan to make it.
okay, so you didn't actually have any role in the, either decision.
Um, I was made aware of it. I don't,
Did
I
you
don't,
actually make, I mean,
it's not a decision I would have made. Tony Pizzula would have made the decision.
okay, so you didn't have a role in either one.
No.
Okay, so why are we checking out his reasons for these things?
We moved on to disability, Your Honor, as it relates
Well,
to
but
whether
the
or
thing
not.
is, but see, the thing is, if he doesn't have any role, um, my understanding, and I just would raise the question, I understand that he's, you know, important person, but the issue for me is, do they have any firsthand knowledge of any of the issues in question, or are they involved in the decision? And so I'm, um, you know, my understanding, we've asked questions, he's been asked questions with the eye or thinking that he has played a role, or he is a decision maker, or his perception mattered. And since it apparently doesn't, I am wondering, what is the foundation for, what is he being called for, and what does he have to say about this case? My understanding, and at least that he, regarding the events particularly in question, that he doesn't, well, if he doesn't have any role in the situation, other than the issue as to whether he was, he talked to Mr. Valuch regarding his performance. What else do we have here?
Not much was going to be left. It was going to be as to the shoulder injury, Your Honor, and I think that was going to be pretty much the last area.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to figure things out. That's all.
Certainly, and I guess we can qualify that with a couple of other questions with, as it relates to gross profits, Mr. Jansen, would Mr. Pizzula be equally adept to testify as to gross profits?
Yes.
And so you and Mr. Pizzula would have the same information as to gross profits.
Yes.
And as it relates to Mr. Valuch, your testimony is that it was Tony's decision to transfer him from service manager to a workshop dispatch,
Yes.
and then the elimination of the workshop dispatch. Whose decision was that?
That would have been Tony's and mine as well.
Was it part, was it yours? That's seems to be contradictory from what you said before.
Well, at some point I'm made aware of everything. So,
But being made aware of is not part of the decision. Do you have
No,
any role of?
well, I'll clarify. I mean, when someone's gonna make a change in a department like this, they make me aware. I ask what the reasons are. I ask if we've got a replacement, so on and so forth, what we're gonna offer, if we're gonna offer the employee another position. You know, and frankly, I I have to trust my managers, and let them make those decisions if they think there's an opportunity for us to get better.
Okay, so this to saying, so do you remember asking him a question about these two decisions?
I don't think it went that way. I think I was made aware of the fact that, they either wanted to make a change or were going to make a change. And there was definitely a conversation about it, and I was made aware of it.
Okay, so, but it was not in a setting in which that there was any question of you changing the decision or delaying the decision. Is that correct?
Well, I could do both. I could delay a decision like that and tell them not to do it or to wait. Or I could tell them not to do it
Okay,
I don't.
I'm going to be picky here, and so excuse
Very
me.
good.
My understanding, made aware means in my lawyer thing with words is that it's already happened and now you're telling me.
No, that's not what I mean.
Okay, because that's what the words mean to in the situation. If it's a matter of, asking your approval for the decision, that is a different question. That means something different. That suggests that the decision has not been made and they're talking to you about it and it hasn't been, that your approval is needed so you have a role in the decision. So which of those are you talking about? Had it already been made when you were informed, or did you have in a position where you could have you could have changed it or done something about it if you didn't agree with it?
The latter. I can always do something and change it. It was not done at that time.
Okay. So um so 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 your approval, in my picky language, that your approval was necessary for the decision and you did. Is that fair?
Sure. I would say yes, based on, the way you interpret those words. Yes.
Because you could have decided not to give approval and you
Correct.
didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, then we are now in a different thing that your state of mind does matter because you could have said no. Okay,
Okay.
these things to us matters. These are important distinctions.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead with your next question and dealing with, and just to say, as far as the matter, oh, why did you, I guess, these are just sort of standard. Why did you approve?
Because the manager would have told me the reasons why. Um, I would have absorbed that. In this case, it was performance. I was aware of it the whole time along the way. I would have asked for the next plan or the next person. I could have objected and stopped it.
But you don't. My understanding is, if from your language, and again, I pay attention to your words. You don't remember what you would, as I understand it, you don't remember what you were told.
I
Is
don't
that correct?
remember. No, I don't recall what that conversation, the last conversation about making a change with the position was.
Okay, so in either of these things, you don't remember the conversations.
I don't specifically, no.
And so we were at the question and dealing with, do you remember considering or thinking about anything other than what's under the purview of performance that was a factor in you approving the decisions?
Were there any other factors other than performance?
Yeah.
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. Okay, so now I understand differently, and remember, sir, we're drawing lines with words over here. That's what we do for a living, and so they matter. So,
I would say that, sir, I don't do that, so I'm not familiar, so.
well, I'm explaining it to you.
I
So go
appreciate that.
ahead,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brady. So I understand him to be a person whose state of mind does matter, and so that these things about what he considered or not, but we have a very limited foundation as far as him remembering specifically what he did or what was told. Go ahead.
And just to clarify or kind of quantify that, the sole recollection is as it relates to performance. And so I guess for the remaining questions, we covered your knowledge of disability. We covered your knowledge or perceived knowledge of any aspects with Mr. Valuch. We covered the age was not a component for that. And so then it's as it relates to the retention of Mr. Valuch, there was a conversation with, there's testimony by Mr. Valuch earlier that indicated that he thought that International Autos was forcing him out by the workshop dispatch role elimination. Do you have any personal recollection of forcing Mr. Valuch out?
No,
I mean, was it your intention of forcing Mr. Valuch out at any point in time of his employment with International Autos?
no. We don't force people out.
And that's why he was offered a service advisor position?
What do you mean that's why?
Because you don't force people out. So if
Oh,
you're
yeah,
saying,
no, we would either retain them in a different position or we would fire them.
and so did you fire Mr. Valuch?
No,
And is that the similar analysis that went into hiring him in January of 2017 to begin with?
I don't understand.
That he was being transferred from Elmbrook
Mhm,
when he was hired on.
mhm.
And so were you involved in the decision to hire him?
Yes,
And was that a similar analysis of we don't force people out and that's why you brought him on?
yeah, they made a change out there and they asked if we would take him over here. We had it available and we did it, yeah. If we didn't, again, we would have terminated him.
And your expectation in hiring Mr. Valuch in January of 2017 is that were what?
They were, say it again?
Your expectation when you hired Mr. Valuch in January of 17 was, what were your expectations?
For him to lead the department and, perform and make sure the department performed.
And so your expectations at hiring is that he'd be successful and thrive in the position.
Yes,
Is that how it ended up working out?
no,
All right. I have no further questions on the adverse direct. I think everything else has kind of been pushed to Mr. Pristula.
Okay, Cross.
Yep. So I have to find my. So, Mr. Jensen, you're familiar with what a RAP report is, correct?
yes.
All right. And I hope that I have the right one here. So I'm showing you what's been marked as complainants exhibit number 1, page 28 of 50 ERD 1027. We're looking at the service advisor recap report for the month of February 2017. Would you agree?
Yes,
All right, and this is, this encompasses the service where Mr. Valuch was working at that time, namely with Mercedes-Benz, correct?
yes,
And this is the report that Mr. Valuch would have had access to in order to assess performance of his department, correct?
yes,
And in fact, the RAP report is, you've described it as the individual scorecard for all the service writers that ties into the gross profit, correct?
yes,
And this number here, under total sales grand total, this 113,176.66, that would be the total sales for the service department under Mr. Valuch for that month, correct?
yes,
All right. And another number that is important to review in the RAP report is this hours sold, correct?
yes,
And in fact, you're looking for a year-over-year increase in the hours sold because you sell more hours, you make more money, correct?
yes, we're looking for that as well as, part sales to go up.
Okay. And if those all go up, then the total sales will go up, correct?
Correct.
And that's the ultimate goal that you're looking for from your service manager, is for them to have a regular increase of this total sales amount, correct?
Yes,
And in fact, when you were testifying earlier about reports that you looked at on a regular basis throughout the week, the RAP report is one of the, is that report for the service department, correct?
yes,
Okay. Now, you testified earlier about Ms. Fitzgerald was the person who replaced Mr. Valuch in West Dallas. Do you recall that?
yes,
And it was your understanding that Ms. Fitzgerald was in her late 20s to early 30s when you hired her as a service manager, correct?
yeah, I'm not sure of her exact age.
But that was your impression of her age, correct?
Yes,
Now, it was also your impression that Mr. Valuch was under a lot of stress, that he was, that he exhibited that at the workplace, correct?
yes,
All right, but your evidence of that is limited to the fact that he stayed late to finish some training, correct?
I mean, is that what I said? Sure, yeah, it's, sure, training was
And-
one of them, yeah,
Okay, and one time he told you that he had a lot on his plate. Correct? And that was your evidence as to feeling that he was flustered or stressed at work, correct?
yes,
Okay. Now, as of 2017, the West Allis location was the only one that had a dispatcher position, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you had been reviewing the possibility of eliminating that dispatcher position for several months prior to doing so, correct?
Yes.
And prior to moving Mr. Valuch into the dispatcher position, he had been doing the dispatch work as well as doing the service manager work, correct?
Yes.
And then finally, you've never taken any classes or done any reading about equal employment opportunity or non-discrimination in employment, have you?
No.
No further questions.
Okay, any redirect?
Not as it relates to anything that came in on the cross. No.
Anything at all? I'm just
No,
trying to deal with so that he's done and doesn't have to come back. I'm sure he wishes that he could come back more often and stuff, but trying to get it done. So any more questions for him?
no, I don't have anything further for Mr. Jansen. No.
Okay, then thank you very much, sir, and you're excused.
Very good.
Okay, this case is continued until 9 o'clock on May 19th, 2022. Thank you very much and get some sleep.
Sounds good.
One,
Thank you.
one thing I just wanted to clarify, just the order of questioning, it's going to be the same where I'll ask